I'm interested in what are you doing with warships?
Indeed, this was a question I asked myself many times. Obviously, as you know, I came on really from World of Tanks. That was my background. That was, you know, British Army and all the rest of it. So when those years ago, it must be 2 or 3 years, when World of Warships was obviously being talked about and discussed and the development side of it. And I think really at that stage, obviously I would stress, I'm not an expert on ships or the Navy or anything. That was not my area of expertise. But what we already had those links with a lot of the organisations, and much of this in the historical world of everything is about who you know as opposed to what you know. So we had a lot of links, like the director of Bombington Tank Museum knew the director of Chatham, who knew somebody else, who blah blah. So it made the research side of it slightly easier for us. And of course, from my perspective in the military, I've got a lot of friends who served in the Royal Navy. And of course, we always had that love-hate relationship between the Army and the Navy. You know, we were great friends, but we hated each other, that sort of thing, as I'm sure you get exactly the same in the German Army and the rest of it. So yeah, that's really where it started from that. And to be fair, the job-wise, I mean, that initial, like for tanks, when you're asked for research information, it doesn't really matter if it's for a tank or if it's for a ship, it's the same information. And we found very quickly that it was actually, in some respects, a lot easier to find the information for the ships than it ever was for the tanks. For a number of reasons, but really the main one was where, of course, there are not hybrid ships. So like we had, you know, the hybrid tank with the Sherman turret and the AMX chassis and blah, 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 and all these thousands of different varieties and different this and different that. With ships, it was a lot more straightforward, and also they're obviously a lot bigger, there are a lot less of them, so all the documentation was actually kept. So we had, you know, it was easier, it wasn't easy, but it was easier to find the blueprints and the research material to start with. So really it was that, the reason I came on board initially was just to do that research side of it, because we knew the people, and that was the basis of it. So I don't profess to be a naval expert whatsoever. And I had a lot of friends, as I said, who we did get in for feedback. We did let them see, said, look, you know, we're doing this game, have a look at this, you know, and we spoke to a lot of people who served on the ships. Is this the way it moved? Is this the way it manoeuvred? Does this look right? What was it like doing this? That was it. So I can't remember what your question was now, but that was that was about it. Yeah, really. So I mean, I would imagine that eventually we will have the equivalent to, you know, the Chieftain and the Challenger and that sort of thing. I'd imagine. I don't know. I'm just speculating here that we will have somebody to do the ships who actually served on them, and obviously can give us a lot more feeling for what it was like than I possibly could. So that's it. That's your question. Thank you very much.
Is there any ship still existing ship do you ever wanted to visit for yourself?
I have to say, yeah, I'd love to go and see some of the American ships. I haven't, obviously, Nick Moran has got the American side of the business, so I'm quite jealous that he's seen some of their, you know, obviously their battleships and you know, aircraft carriers and that sort of thing. So I'd love to visit some of them. But in the UK, I mean, although it's absolutely nothing to do with the game, and it's not in the game or anything, I love HMS Victory. Now, for me, that sort of summed up this whole, you know, mentality of ships, the good old days of ships when, you know, they were the ship's cat and a small boy that used to, you know, roam around the ship, and cannons and things like that. That, for me, was all about ships. So I've been very lucky. I've just recently come back from Australia. So we were filming HMS Vampire, which is in Sydney Harbour, which is great. So again, it's great for me because I'm learning all the time. And obviously I say, you know, I don't know about ships, but obviously a lot of the mechanical side for it, you know, the guns were, you know, the Bofors guns and that sort of thing, is all very translatable to military service per se. So we spent some time there, but we then went on from there to Asia, and we filmed a couple of ships there. I can't say what they are, but we filmed a couple of ships there. We're about to leave again, and we're going to go to Korea. We're going to do some filming of ships over there. So yeah, it's really interesting for me. And the video side of it, it was you know, a whole new experience filming ships. It was interesting, and as I said, the thing I found best, and I mentioned it on the presentation, was meeting the people who served on them. And obviously we've met quite a few people who served on these ships during the war and have been in active service with them, and talking about, not only the ship and the way it works and the mechanics and all the stuff that helped us to bring it to the game, but also to get a better understanding of, obviously I'm used to tank warfare, modern tank warfare, but to understand what it's like to serve on a ship. So, again, I digress massively from your question, sorry.
What is the feedback of those guys who served on the ships? Are they happy with it? Do they
Really good.
appreciate it?
Yeah,
do they
really.
say it's not a game, it's war?
No, really good. As you can imagine, the first time that you obviously show somebody who's who's served on that ship that you're trying to recreate, it's also a bit, oh God, what's he going to think of it, blah, blah, blah. But no, really, really positive. I think from a visual perspective, everybody was very impressed at the amount of work and the amount of effort that went into recreating them virtually in the game. So, and as I said, for us, it is the single thing I've most loved about working for Wargaming for these years now, is the fact that it's not always about take. I love the fact that we've also been able to promote this history, because I think it's important. I think it's critical that people remember, whatever nationality you are, but remember this history and remember their country's history and the world's history. But also, of course, the opportunity to give back a bit. We start to, like we did with, we've worked with Bovington and we've worked with Munster and we've worked with numerous tank museums. So now to be able to start to do this with more of these naval museums is lovely for me, to be able to give back a little bit as well. So I'm very lucky. I always say I have the easiest job. I just supply information. The clever people are the developers who manage to put all these blueprints and things and create that on screen. What was your question?
All the people who served on the ships did react to them.
Yeah, very positively. Yeah, we've had comments obviously about manoeuvring in particular. Obviously, the way the ships manoeuvre. I mean, obviously, when you're talking, I don't know, an aircraft carrier does not turn, on a dice. It takes a long time. So we have to have a little bit of accuracy tempered with gameplay. It'd be a boring game if it took an hour and a half for you to move 10 feet or something. So.
Were some guys who evaded torpedoes, like I think the Yorktown?
Yeah, good example, yeah. So it was very, very positive, and we reacted to it. If they disagreed with something, we go, okay, then we can think of that, or let's put that in.
Did you ever receive negative feedback because it's a game?
Do you know what? I don't, and I said, because this game is very new, obviously, but World of Tanks, it was always been this, and I have to say, and I'll be totally honest with you here, when I first was approached by Wargaming to work, I was very sceptical, because obviously my background and I've lost friends in conflicts in Afghanistan and in Iraq and that sort of thing as well. So it was almost a bit. We've always had this thing. We had this conversation with Victor that calling your company Wargaming, because war is not a game, was quite problematic. But I have to say that once you get over that initial hurdle and you explain to them that this is what we do, and we do a lot of stuff historically. And I think I do say, and I'm not making us to be something we're not, but I do think we've helped to promote history. In the right way. We're very lucky that the games are not gratuitous violence. We're very lucky that they're not people getting killed. We're very lucky that that's obviously, I say lucky. It was a conscious decision by Victor and co not to do that.
Yeah, it's just the machinery.
It's just the machinery, and I think by us, and it's not always been a company of take. As I said, we have given back. We do work with charities. We do work with a lot of the museums. We try to give something back as well, which I said from a very personal point of view was for me. There was no doubt in my mind initially that was my singularly biggest concern about working for anything to do with war games. But don't get me wrong, I mean, as soldiers in the army, we love playing games. I mean, we enjoy playing games. It was, what boy doesn't, I think. It's that sort of male mentality, little boy mentality, guns and ships and tanks and things as well. So, yeah, it's been positive. I mean, probably one of the hardest occasions we had to deal with was when, I don't know if you know, but our European charities, War Child, we chose them. I was asked a couple of years ago to identify a charity to work with because the American side of the business was working with a lot of American veterans. Obviously, the European side, we need to identify something. Now, this was a huge task for us because obviously everybody's saying, well, veterans. I said, yeah, but we're Europe, we can't. How can we possibly support veterans? We can't. Do we support German veterans, Polish veterans, British veterans? What do we do? Czechoslovakian veterans? We can't do veterans. So I came across War Child when I was in Iraq, serving in Iraq, and I thought, well, this for me was, you know, it's the consequences of war, and it's these children who are affected by conflict and that. So I thought it was a great organisation to work with. So, and again, it was one of those things where it's nice to be able to give back to it. But the conversation initially in the early days we had with them, as you can imagine, was, you know, really, you're called Wargaming, and you're a game that produces, you know, you're a company that produces games about the war. You know, do we want to be linked with you? You know, blah 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 blah. So, and luckily, when they saw sort of A, the game, and B, what we do, it was all good from there, and we started working with them. Mm-hmm. Have I answered your question?
Yes.
You also you play also the games, or you're more for the material stuff, for the real hard stuff?
No, I play all the games. I play a lot less now than I used to, I have to say, purely because it's been a bit. The last year or so has been crazy busy, I think, for everybody. But it's hard. I've had to wean myself off a bit off tanks and play a bit more ships now.
Okay.
But yeah, no, we certainly play. Yeah.
What's your favorite class?
Do you know, they asked me just now, actually. I think at the moment it's too early for me to say. Well, I'm quite enjoying everything at the moment to see how they all perform on that. My favourite, like it always was with playing World of Tanks, will be when I can find something that I'm really good at and I keep winning. I think that will become my favourite. But at the moment, I'm liking them all.
Okay.
Not so many cruisers. I'm not so into the cruisers, I have to say.
Okay.
Do you think there's a huge gap between gamers or wargamers and history fans? That what I felt last year in Munster, there were a lot of older tank enthusiasts who said, those are the World of Tank guys. They think less of gamers. Did you experience the same?
Yeah, it's funny you should mention Munster, because I've always thought, I've been asked this question before, and the only time I've ever come across it to that extent was, funny enough, in Munster. This was at the modelers and all these sort of things, and we were there as well, because I had a lot of conversations with them. Which is funny, because when you look at statistically, we've also got a lot of people who play the games who are historians and older. I mean, a lot of the player base are, you know, sort of, well, you know, my age. You're younger than me, I'm sure, but my age. You always. And yet, on the other hand, you could say, I remember I was at Bombington recently, and I was talking. We were discussing something to do with I think it was the Cromwell down there. We were talking about the Cromwell. There's this gentleman next to me with the medals and his tank regiment burial and that, and he overheard our conversations. And he says, I served on that tank, and I was like, wow, this is just like amazing. So he starts telling us about his tank and blah 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 blah. And he says, oh, you work for World of Tanks, do you? I said, yeah. He says, I quite enjoyed that game. And I was like, whoa, this is the guy who was a veteran. He'd served on that tank during the war, and he plays the game. And I was like, then straight away, so what do you enjoy about it? You know, what do you like about it? And again, his answer was, well, for me it was, I think from any tanker you get quite attached to your vehicles. It was just something. It was fun, because like any game, I think it has to be fun to enjoy it. But again, it's not gratuitous fun. It's not. You know, we're all grown-ups, we're all adults, and we know the ultimate result of all these things. Let's face it, everything that we've done here was designed to kill. That's their ultimate aim in it. So yeah, you will always get sceptical people. Obviously, we don't get as many sceptical people as if we were producing, I don't know, first-person shooters or something, or whatever, but I think there will always be.
So yeah, what I experienced, that it's not about the thing that those are machineries who kill people. It's more like, they are gamers, they know nothing compared to us.
Yeah, and
arrogance.
I would disagree with that, because I've had, and I will quote Richard Smith, who's the director of Bombington Tank Museum. He was, we've been working with Bombington for a few years now, and we had an event down there, and he came up to me, we had this great conversation. He says, Richard, he says, I will take my hat off. He said, when we first spoke, I was a little bit sceptical about all of this. And, you know, a lot of the museums are quite stuffy and are quite set in their ways, and luckily Richard Smith he wasn't a historian, he wasn't anything to do with military or anything, but he was a businessman, and he saw this niche in the market where you have to promote history. You can't, otherwise history will die out, people will forget. And I think that slowly people are coming around to see that, yes, these are games. However, he said, I've just had a conversation with an 8 or 9 year old, and this 8 or 9 year old has been telling me things I did not know about I can't remember which tank it was, but it was one of his collection down there. He said, I was amazed at the level of knowledge of this kid. Didn't know who he was or anything. He said, well, how did you know all that? Is it just like a hobby of yours? And he went, well, no, I played World of Tanks. And straight away, Richard went, do you know what? He says, I don't care what people think or anything. I said, but for this kid of that age to be so interested, and of course, his interest then went from just the armour thickness or whatever it was they were discussing, but also into the background and the different wars and the people and that sort of thing, so it promoted his level of interest. So, and I thought for me this was a lovely comment from a director of a museum as fabulous as Bovington, to talk to this young guy who was, because he was a player and he loved his tanks, he started getting interested in history. So I thought, well, that can't be anything but a good thing. But yeah, you will always have negative comments. But I have to say, I mean, in the years I've had much more positive than I ever have negative. To be fair, most of the negative stuff comes from the players, doesn't it? So about nothing to do with that sort of thing, but other issues and all the rest of that. So.
Last questions?
Dun, dun, dun.
In your opinion, what was the best tank of Second World War?
Oh!
I don't think we expect you to say a German one. Your personal opinion.
I think that's almost an impossible question because I don't think there was a best tank. I mean,
the well-balanced tank.
Yeah, but somebody asked me today actually what my favourite was, and I said, well, that's easy for me, and it is a German tank, and it's Tiger 1. Now, I'm not sure whether I love Tiger 1 because nothing to do with the 88 or anything like that. There's something about Tiger 1 that for me. I find it fascinating, but I find the history behind it fascinating. I've been very lucky. I've interviewed 3 or 4 people now that served in Tiger 1 during the war and found their stories incredible. And there's something about, that particular vehicle has been taken to this almost legendary status, hasn't it? And of course, it's helped by, Fury and White Tiger and all these sort of things as well. But the first video I ever made with the company was, we had no idea what we were doing, didn't have a clue, was on Tiger 1. So researching and spending a lot of time researching and learning about it, and I thought, this is just, I'm not saying it's the best because, it had, you could, on one hand you could say it was fantastic, on the other hand you could say this about it was absolutely terrible. But when you look into the development and how ahead of everything it was at that particular time in the war, and the thought that had gone into the development of that particular vehicle, it makes it absolutely outstanding. I mean, it really was, a work of art, I would say. So, for many reasons, that was my favourite. I don't think you can say it was the best, to be perfectly honest. Like, again, somebody asked me today, what do I think at the moment is the best tank in the world, as we speak? I said, well, I would say Challenger 2, but of course I would, because A, I'm British, and B, I've served on it in Iraq and that sort of thing as well. I said, but I've also been lucky enough to, I've driven Leopard 2, I've fired from Leopard 2, I've been in M1A2 Abrams and this sort of thing. And to be fair, they're all damn good tanks. They're all really good tanks. There's not a lot between them, to be honest. And I love Leopard 2, I have to say.
Okay.
Full of good.
I guess that's it.
Or maybe one question.
Yeah,
we have some concept tanks in World of Tanks.
Yeah.
So do you give your feedback to the guys who create the tanks to give, okay, this gun can maybe, or this turret or something?
We do give feedback. What we tend to be, obviously now, if we're talking World of Tanks, that it tends to be now that feedback will be, a lot of it is player generated, whether you like to think so or not. So if we identify major problems with things. Really we're at a stage now with World of Tanks where there will always be things they can do, but this is very much a development stage now, so they've really taken on the development role. Yes, we do have disagreements, and we do disagree about things, and they usually win and do what they want to do anyway. So, it will always be, and as I said, and I don't know how this is going to go with the World of Warships. I don't think it'll go the same because it's a much more structured game from the vehicle, from the ship perspective. It's pretty much set in stone at the moment what you can do with a ship and what a ship can do.
Okay.
I have one question. I'm from the YouTube scene, and it's a hardcore question. Will be ever there let's show together a tank with your US
With Nick?
commandant?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And I have to say, I mean, funny enough, we were talking to like jingles and this sort of thing the other day about all these sort of things. There seems to be this, we are really good friends and we talk a lot about everything, and we would love to do stuff together. When all this strange video stuff came about, because it was never our jobs, they just thought, the community would love to see people making videos about tanks and all this sort of thing. And we were like, really? Okay, a bit sceptical. Yeah, we'd love to do. We did the 360 stuff together. We just sat there and did it. The problem for us is always logistics. So it seems to be that, obviously, he's always busy or I'm always busy, and it seems to be very few times, but there's been many things discussed. One of the things that was discussed, and it may still happen, was to do, the idea was to do a Top Gun type show. And we thought that'd be fun because, let's face it, we are eventually going to run out of filming tanks. We are just going to run out of tanks. And we're going to have to think of new things to do. So we had this idea to do this sort of Top Gear style show. So you've got the Brit, you've got the American, Irish American, and we're going to have one of the Russian guys as well doing it. So, and we can all just have friendly banter. We pick a tank each. Obviously for me it'd be some piece of shit British tank. And we just put it through its paces. Now, this was discussed about a year ago. We did a lot of work and effort on this. The problem we're having is trying to convince somebody that they're going to lend us 3 tanks, and we can drive it as fast as it go, and we can do this and do that sort of thing. Which at the moment, all these collectors, as you can imagine, are not overly keen on the idea of these 3 idiots abusing their tanks. So.
I would like it.
Yeah, we'd like to. We'd like to do something together. I've had to say, my interest is always in the historical side a bit more than the, I was a gallery instructor and that sort of thing. So, I know the technological side, but I also find the history fascinating. That's the bit which sort of passions me a bit more.
Who's coming up with the ideas for the shows? Is it a team effort or is there someone who's...
Yeah, good question. It is a team effort. As I said, going back to ships at the moment, it's a bit odd at the moment because I was suddenly asked, we're going to go film a ship, and I was like, yeah, seriously? You want me to film a ship? It's obviously very much, for me, I get a budget now. I've actually got my own budget, so I'm allowed to spend it on filming. It is getting to the stage where it's quite, not hard, but it's a bit trickier to find up new ideas. What I never wanted was, because Nick does incredibly good videos about the technical side of it, the tanks. What I didn't want to do was to just do exactly the same, but in Europe. And I thought, well, if you want to watch Nick's videos, then you watch Nick's videos. If you want to watch our videos, watch our videos, and you watch them both. I've never understood this American-Europe mentality. It doesn't make any sense to me at all, because we all work together and we're all in the same company. But that's why we concentrated a bit more on the historical side. I wanted archive footage because I love to see the tanks in there, the right place at the right time, and not just talking about inside them or whatever. And coming up with new ideas was, getting quite. We've just done a series actually on the Muckleborough collection, which was good, where we started to, we're now growing and growing and growing. So no longer, I think, the community are happy to see you talking about a tank. They want to see that tank driving. I've had so many comments about why don't you fire them, which is like, yeah, seriously. So it's always trying to think of new things. But for now I do have my own budget, so we have some new things coming up. A very good idea I have to say I've had recently was people wanted to see a bit more about, and I thought it was quite fascinating, the crew and how you load the gun and how you do all this sort of thing. Now, that's great. I love the idea of that. Obviously, the problem we've got is finding a vehicle you can do it on. To be fair, it would have to be a pretty modern vehicle so that we've still got the ability to load around and load the ammunition. So I have been discussing at the moment with the British Army, which I'm hoping, we're trying to get clearance at the moment, we're going to be able to film live firing, shooting, inside, loading the gun, actually firing it, all this sort of thing. Obviously it'll be on a modern tank because we can't do it on the old ones. But that's the story behind the sort of video side of life. And with the ships as well, it's becoming incredibly problematic at the moment because they want content for ships. And and it's a whole different ball game. I mean, you know, we had problems with tanks because at some stages, and the filming's all about money. Filming's expensive, really expensive. And when they say, Richard, we want you to film 3 tanks in one day, now that's fine if you're doing it in a logical sequence, if you're talking about one tank and you move on to the next. The problem was with cameramen, you've got, I don't know, they're worried about lighting and all this sort of stuff as well. So, right, what we want to do now is we want you to do the introduction to the Comet. We then want you to jump inside this Sherman and talk about that, and then before you lose the light, we want you to do the suspension on this third vehicle, and you're like, whoa, this is like really, really, really bad. So things were getting quite mixed up at one stage with the filming. And a lot of it is monetary driven. You know, I didn't appreciate it. I'm not a filmer. I'm not used to it at all. I didn't appreciate how much resources, time, and effort goes into making just one film. And I have to say, you know, it's a lot of hours for, you know, a 13-minute YouTube clip or something. And now we started using new things. The last collection we did at Mucklerborough, we used a drone for the first time, and we were pleased with that. But again, when you're using a drone, it's half a day shooting just to get the footage with the drone, and then obviously weather. We filmed a ship in Asia, and it was a bloody nightmare. It was monsoon season, and trying to film, this wasn't just rain. I mean, this was rain that hurt as it hit you. So we were like filming. We'd film for 5 minutes, and then the skies would open. We'd have to stop for an hour, and it was a nightmare. And we were running out of time. Yeah, there you go. But I'm always open to suggestions for filming.
Was it like during the shooting of the Mikasa, or?
No, that was something else.
Okay, something
else.
Unannounced.
Yeah, unannounced. Yeah.
Which is in the game? Or will it come in the game?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Yet.
Which one? The man a drink?
You know me, I'll tell you anything. I always get in trouble.
Okay.
Ask a question in 5 hours.
Okay, fine.
Any more? No?
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.